So we had a mayoral candidate forum here in New York City, and it was organized and hosted by our Safe Streets community, Transportation Alternatives, Families for Safe Streets, a number of other organizations active in this space. And we got 6 of the 7 candidates who were declared to be running for mayor in the upcoming June primary here in New York City. And we covered a lot of great topics. There's so much, there's more than I could talk about, but one thing that came up again and again is what I think is a central problem we have here in New York City in terms of street safety and managing our streets, which is what to do with the NYPD. And why can't the NYPD be a better partner in managing our streets than they are? And I heard some very bold proposals. Scott Stringer got up and he said, one of the problems we've got is police park their own personal vehicles illegally all over the sidewalk and curb cuts and bus stops, creating a huge inconvenience and a sense of lawlessness near the police precinct, ironically. He said, you tell them they can't do it anymore, and if they keep doing it, you fire them. Well, that drew a lot of applause. That was quite the applause line. But I have to tell you, as someone who's been litigating against the police here in New York City for about 20 years, as well as, political activist, the NYPD is a highly organized and disciplined corporate body with its own self-interests. And I have heard politicians say that they are going to get tough with the police and make the police do their job. But it is very difficult to do because the police don't just follow orders. The fact is, we don't have civilian control of the military here in New York City. And I think Bill de Blasio learned that. Bill de Blasio came in like he was going to be the big reform the cops mayor, right? We had just gotten the Floyd decision, not the one involving the death of George Floyd, but the Floyd stop and frisk decision, declaring stop and frisk to be an unlawful, unconstitutional policy as applied. We had Bill de Blasio talking about how the police weren't respecting New Yorkers, and he got elected on that platform. And then I think most people will remember there were 2 police officers brutally and tragically assassinated while sitting in their police cruiser. I think it was in Queens that happened, maybe a month or 2 after de Blasio was brought into office. And after that, you just did not hear a peep from Mayor de Blasio about the police force. And the police just basically did whatever they wanted. And in many ways, they worked to undermine the Vision Zero program that we got Mayor de Blasio to endorse. We had some gains under Vision Zero for the first few years, and we actually drove down the number of deaths from above 300, as I recall, down to a generational low of 200 people killed by drivers per year in New York City in 2016. Since then, it's been going up. So we need the police to partner with us in terms of traffic law enforcement, but I really don't know how much success you're going to have wagging your finger and telling the police that you're going to fire them all if they don't do what you say. I've never seen a mayor who could do that. It was extremely difficult for Michael Bloomberg to get the police to actually show up in traffic court to stand behind the tickets that they issued to drivers. As I recall, it was Michael Bloomberg who, for the first time, created a rule that said if the police don't go to back up their tickets in traffic court, that they would lose time off. And that's what got them to go. That's one of the reasons the police really disliked Michael Bloomberg, even though he was kind of a law and order mayor, right? Because they just didn't want to do that work of having to go into DMV. So I think it's a very heavy lift with the police force here in New York City to get them to help us with our Safe Streets program and making the streets more efficient. Another speaker said, well, we should just get the police out of traffic law enforcement and hand it over to civilian enforcement force. I think that approach holds much greater promise. The fact is, we're already doing it. We have a 2,300 camera automated enforcement system here in New York City between speed cameras, red light cameras, and bus mounted cameras that are there issuing tickets to motor vehicles that are where they shouldn't be, right? And at this point, more than 90% of the tickets written within New York City are written by cameras, not by police officers. So we have largely automated traffic law enforcement. Now, there are some types of traffic law enforcement which have to be done in person. I think failure to yield is one that's very difficult to do by camera. There's some judgment involved, there's some discretion involved. That's what we need human traffic enforcement officers for. But do they have to be police officers? I don't think so. I mean, it's certainly true that sometimes violence flares up in the midst of traffic stops conducted by police officers. That would be a reason why you need to have armed police officers who are trained in the use of force doing that type of work. But it strikes me that if it's done the right way, with the proper rules and procedures, you don't need to have cops with guns doing traffic law enforcement. And if you go by the discussions I've had with police officers I know, very few of them will tell you, oh yeah, I became a police officer in order to do traffic law enforcement. No, they're interested in fighting serious violent crime. And frankly, that's a function that we need them for first and foremost. So why not use a civilian enforcement mechanism and force here in New York City for traffic law enforcement and just make sure that it's handled in such a way that these encounters don't, get out of control with people who have their guns in their cars, and we know that that happens, or use of force unnecessarily in the context of a traffic stop, turn it into something that can't be managed by a non-peace officer type representative. I think there's a lot of room for that, and that's really the direction we should be going in. Police don't want to do it. We don't like the way police do it, traffic law enforcement. So let's try something different. I'm on board with that.